السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Masjid Carpark podcast episode 60 from memory. Was it 60? Anyway, today we have a very special podcast for you with some special guests while we wait for Sheikh Khalid to get off his phone. Right?
You've done 60 already.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, we did 2 khatams.
Welcome, mashallah. Welcome Dr. Mufti Abdur Rahman from the UK. And we have Brother Talha. But I think to introduce the two properly, we'll hand it over to our illustrious companion over here. Go for it, mate.
Okay, he's very self-conscious today. Alhamdulillah, today we have Mufti Abdur Rahman bin Yusuf Mangera from London. I had the pleasure to meet him many years ago in London. It's one of the highlights of my trip there, alhamdulillah, and established a connection. And over the years, Mufti Saab has advised me due to extensive experience on various matters, like how to durus in the masjid and so forth. As an example, I contacted Mufti Saab regarding a masjid, how to actually approach a dars where there's different madahib. And mashallah, Mufti Saab, the advice that he gave, I think I followed it for about 2 years. So Mufti Saab, mashallah, studied in the UK.
Only 2 years. What happened after that?
That's what I was just about to ask.
I had to stop that. I had to stop. No, the advice continues. The advice continues till now. It's but that dars stopped, and I started another place. But mashallah, Mufti Saab's a graduate of Darul Umberi, and then studied iftaar Darul Zakaria. Also studied Mazar Ulum Saharanpur, and also in Syria. And mashallah, did his PhD, if I remember correctly, in SOAS. Sorry. And alhamdulillah, like he's studied, is well known. We don't needs no introduction, but alhamdulillah, he's blessed our land in Australia, the big brown land down under, far away from everywhere in the world, from everywhere.
Wow,
and,
someone's nervous. Mufti Saab, he's never like this. Usually I can't get a word in.
Yeah, because you guys are making me self-conscious.
I'm enjoying
they're
this.
smiling at me in between.
You're welcome
seeing
anytime. I'm liking this here. Keep going. So anyway, start us some more, brother.
Jazakallah khair.
I think New Zealand is further out.
It doesn't really count. It's like a Pacific island. His in-laws are from.
I beg to
his
differ.
in-laws are from there. Yes.
Anyway.
And also we have Talha Bozkurt from Melbourne Muslim Seminary.
Correct.
And somehow he's a student of Mufti Abdur Rahman.
I had the opportunity to attend a couple of his classes on reading manuscripts at the Cambridge Muslim College.
Okay, mashallah.
Since then.
Just bring the mic a bit closer, yeah.
Yeah, since then I've been following Mufti Saab on his socials and through Zamzam Academy. So alhamdulillah, I think it's really a blessing for the Melbourne Muslim community to have Mufti Saab down under. And alhamdulillah, the seminary is fortunate enough to host him today for iftaar. Inshallah, we can.
Now there's a lot of Bozkurts.
Bozkurt.
Bozkurt
Translates to the great wolf in Turkish.
Okay, Kurt is wolf.
It's
Yeah.
quite a nationalist
The wolf.
Okay.
totem, as they call it.
Okay, Haji Mustafa Kurt, the wolf, the wolf.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, mashallah.
Did you go to the UK and study in
I was-
person or online?
No, I was there in 2015.
It was there physically.
16, physically.
How was he, Mufti Saab? Give us the real truth here.
I didn't get to see him that often, but
Yep.
when I did see him, it was really good, mashallah.
Mashallah.
So that must be representative of how he is.
Inshallah.
Yeah, look, my brain's still at the stage of Maulana Khalid getting advice from anyone. Right, so that's a pretty big deal here.
Jazakallah khair. And is it in 2001? I was your teacher as well. So
Apparently so,
I want to
yeah.
put myself in
He's
Mufti
got to
Abdur
drop that one in there. He's trying, no, you're not the
yeah.
same level,
What
mate.
grade
You're
were you
studying-
in?
Ilim College, I'll put that in there as well. I was in year 7.
Year 7.
Mashallah.
Yeah,
Mashallah.
yeah.
Mashallah.
So we have a shared student, you know.
Yeah,
And
alhamdulillah.
the first thing.
Have you finished therapy for that year, or is it still
I'm
continuing?
Still overcoming it. It's spiritual.
But, no, it was a good Ilm College. We're going there today. Actually, I haven't been there since 2001.
It's
Since
changed
I
a
worked.
lot.
I visited last year, right?
That
No,
was the head office.
That was the head
We're
office.
also an actual school now.
but we're going to the actual Inverloch,
Yes.
that campus where I was
Present.
teaching. Yeah,
Inshallah.
subhanallah. Okay, that'll be a blast from the past, inshallah.
Yeah.
Okay,
How long ago was that?
2001. We were there. Kadir Bey, he was the principal, and
Yep.
yeah, and then we were. September 11 happened.
Yeah.
And we had a day off, if you remember.
Yes, yes,
Like we were sent
You
home.
had a day off
It
for
was
September 11.
yeah, because it was such
Wow.
a shocking event. Like they were trying to process like what's
Yeah.
you know, and they felt that it was well, we got a day off. Yeah, I think we were there, the teachers were there, but the students got the day off.
Safety reasons as well to avoid any
Yeah.
backlash from the community.
There are backlashes for those sort of things, unfortunately. Like even when the Bali one happened, then our masjid got attacked, like the next next day. So yeah, it was. I think they were just being cautious. Mufti Saab, like this is the podcast is the Masjid Carpark. So Masjid Carpark meaning the brothers that meet outside in the car park, and sometimes it's
that's why we have these cars.
That's why we have tour cars.
And you can play with them with sub. He will not tell you up, but he will tell me off.
Yeah, yeah. So they're using this opportunity to harass me now.
I'm loving this. He's got behave right now.
No, just because we had such a short amount of time with you. What number trip is this to Australia for you?
I think it's the fourth one.
Okay. So now you have a good idea of
Second time to Melbourne, fourth
That's
time
right.
to Australia.
Yeah, last year you came to Melbourne. This year,
Yeah.
what's the?
Well, to be honest, before I came to Australia, hearing about certain things in the media, there were certain politicians that did some weird things about hijab and niqab and things like that.
Okay.
If I remember
Pauline
correctly, several years ago,
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was,
Sister
but
Pauline.
I just you have this idea, and I've noticed that this is usually the case, that you usually hear the worst things of any country, and then when you actually go there, you find out that it's not actually that bad. In fact, from my interaction with many Muslims and some non-Muslims here, I found it's actually very pleasant, to be honest. You know, it's not bad at all. It's actually very good. The Muslims are seemingly doing quite well. Of course, we've got challenges everywhere, but Australia is not a bad place. I mean, it's a really nice place. I mean, it's just too far for to come and settle here.
How long
But
was the
otherwise,
flight here this time?
This time I think it was 12 hours to Singapore, and then another 6 and something hours to here. So with some stopover in between. So yeah,
Okay.
I mean, nearly 22 hours or something like that altogether.
Okay.
So besides that fact, I mean, it's a nice place, and mashallah, I think the Muslims are doing well. Of course, there's challenges everywhere, but that's the nature of the dunya, of the world itself. So inshallah, may Allah allow it to prosper.
I mean, and like what's like you compare it like the UK as a South Asian Muslim was because we have Turkish brothers. Talha's from Turkish, and there's another Talha. There's another Talha outside Lebanese. And so like we used to a very different. So as a South Asian Muslim, when I went to London and to UK,
He felt
Bradford,
at home. He was calling me.
I was talking to Abdul Wajid. I said, this is what we missed out in our childhood, you know? Like now we have a lot of like Indian cuisine and all that sort of stuff. But when we were growing up, we were like, we're a rarity, you know? Like
I remember him calling me saying, you walk behind two old aunties that look like they've just got off the plane, but they've got the most British accent out. When they're chatting
I mean, they like you're multi-generation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. I mean, I think it's because I think you guys had something where only Lebanese and Turks could come.
White Australia policy.
The white Australian policy.
Yeah.
Then after that, the mass immigration.
Yeah, so that was till the early 70s where they had a white, literally nearly for 70 years or something, they had a white only from the turn of the century, early 20th century. So all the early Turks, Arabs, Albanians. Bosnians, all they
What
came.
about Pathans? I mean, what about Pashtun Pathans? They're quite white, aren't they?
Yeah.
They tried to keep them out even after the white Australia
We're
policy
white.
finished,
We're
but
probably white for India, but not white for
not white enough.
for Australia. Probably
Right.
we probably didn't pass the test,
Yeah.
but we got in there. But the Pashtuns, they did come here.
That was 100 years ago.
Yeah, we were there. Before
with the camels.
Yeah.
How are you with camels nowadays, mate?
No, I can't. But
in England, I think it's we started in the 1960s, the mass migration. We've had Muslims there throughout.
Post World War II,
1960s, 1960s is when the whole communities came in. So I think we're telling everyone like 60 to 70 years now in England.
Yeah,
that's
a little bit older than Australia. Probably, yes,
but
probably
I find
almost a generation.
My idea is as well with England, it's not just, it's a little bit older. However, in terms of this, my understanding of it is when it comes to Dini institutions or establishment of madaris, you guys are light years ahead of us.
And that's, I think, multiple reasons for that. Number one, people, I mean, if you compare to America, right? So in America, people went there for education. So it was mostly academics that went there initially and professionals. Whereas in England, it was people from the villages. They literally came with lock, stock and barrel. Madrasa, masjid, imam, mufti, everything. And the first things they established was madrasas.
So the whole village migrated?
Well, I mean...
No, what I mean by that is that many people.
A lot of people, yeah.
people
Lots and lots of people migrated. I mean, it wasn't entire village. I mean, there are some villages which are totally empty. But then when I say Gujarat, for example, I can speak of, there's Pakistan, there's Kashmir, there's lots of people, Bangladesh. Then we've had the Somalis, then we've had the Algerians, and we've had Turks, huge amounts of Turks. So it's quite London, cosmopolitan. But you see, England is very small compared to America or Australia. So it's much more concentrated.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. And everything is close by. Here, we're driving to masjids. In England, that's kind of crazy to drive to a masjid.
Yeah, Mufti Ibrahim, Mona Riyad al-Haq's younger brother, he came here last year. He said you guys have a warped sense of distance. Yeah. He said, I'm going to the it's just 3 kilometers up the road.
Yeah.
Because that's because there's 15 masjids walking distance from his house in Leicester.
3 kilometers is a long distance there.
For me, literally, I've got 2 masjids walking distance. Well, no, 5 masjids walking distance within 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. And within a 10-minute drive, there's at least more than 10 masjids. Within just a 10-minute drive.
Yeah.
Easy, right?
We've got
in Australia,
within a 10-minute drive, we've got 3 from where we are. 2.
Yeah. What's Faulkner?
Faulkner and Coolaroo.
How much?
Within the 10 minutes. Depends on who's driving. You get there within 10 minutes.
But that's over there, just there's masjids, and even sometimes there's Anas on speak, like in East London.
Yeah, some places like that.
Yeah. I mean, like it is very concentrated, and even I realize academically, like when you see for us it's like suburbs almost. They're like you see, that's Leicester's just there, Sheffield. Like when you see the signs on the trains, everything is just next to each other. It's just
very close. Yeah. I mean, the longest distance we go in England is about 4 to 5 hours maximum. Yeah. Right, driving, that's it. And then if you want to go to Glasgow, which is Scotland, we might do an hour flight or 7 hours, but we hardly drive there. Let's just take a flight. But that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Maximum did probably about 12 hours.
That's why when I texted you, I'm only half an hour away.
Yeah.
That was a long distance.
For us, in London, that's still okay because to get from East London to West London takes over an hour. It's easier to get from East London to Cambridge, which is another town, 50 miles away.
Because of traffic.
Because you're outside then. But for London, if I go to West London, that's literally another city for us. South London is another city for us. Yep. It's very complicated. That's London itself. It's like Sydney, I think.
And because of that, like I noticed that the institutes are so close.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of cross pollination, and they're benefiting. Like Cambridge is just there, Oxford is just there, and even when I was at Ibrahim College, I sort of understood a little bit why. Like you'll have connections with Cambridge or even like Shaykh Abdul Hakim Murad or so forth, just because they're so close to each other, so they'll have joint programs or assist each other, and the resources are shared probably better. While here we're sort of these little islands at distance from each other.
So in East London, where I stay, there's at least 15, there's probably more than that now, but there's at least 15 madrasas that are teaching nearly up to Sahih al-Bukhari for men and women.
MashaAllah.
15 of them.
MashaAllah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was when I counted last.
Wow.
So
full classes.
Full classes, yeah.
Wouldn't that make in terms of then the output of that, the output would be so great in London that it would be saturated. It would be saturation of like...
There is. I mean, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
But you see, what we have to really understand, and I think this will be something that's transferable, is that not every area of London is like that. So you've got certain areas which we call boroughs of London, like Hackney, Ilford, Newham, Tower Hamlets, where it's very, very well catered. Because you've had such a sheer output of local ulama, local alims, local scholars and alimat, you've got them catering for every segment of society. We can still do more, but for every segment. You've got children's classes to adult classes to women's classes at multiple levels. Qira'ah classes, you wanted to specialize in qira'ah, you've got qira'ah courses going on, you got everything. However, there's other boroughs which are not so well catered for. Yeah. In London itself, you go to Barnet, Kingston, etc. Why not? Well, because, and this is what it is, the sacrifice of these individuals in these areas is that they took their children when they were young and sent them to study.
Right.
Because there were no local places to study. Sent them to study, they came back and they're catering for their area. Most people stay within the same area. Whereas the others, they're probably more focused on secular education instead.
But there's plenty of Muslims in those areas.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's massive masjids. But they just don't have the same kind of ulama. Like there's one massive area with multiple big masjids in West London, but they've only got about 7 or 10 scholars. Whereas in my local area where I was born, there's about 1,000 hafizes, at least.
Inshallah.
In just Hackney or Clapton alone, there's at least 1,000 huffaz.
See, that's quite something quite interesting for us here, because when you're talking about sending people, some boroughs send people
Put
over.
the headphones on, just so because the mic you keep going out. Jazakallah.
He's very particular about my headphones.
No, because you keep going in.
So
the
some
mic.
boroughs, so you're
I think
talking
you
about.
probably look better with the headphones on.
I'm very photogenic with this,
Thanks for
but
saying
he's
that.
just jealous about it, right? So you've got some areas where they did send their parents, where the parents sent the kids off. I think that might be what's required here.
No, they
to
did that.
transfer that.
They
That back then, but I'm saying for now.
they did. This is sending their kids to like Bury and Dewsbury
Wherever, yeah,
or
exactly.
overseas.
And you know,
Yeah.
that's what we used to do before.
Yeah, okay.
Now, the big madrasas, the boarding
Yeah.
ones, we don't need to go there anymore because
have
you
your
know the
own.
graduates, they've literally come home and started off in locally in the masjid. That's why we're talking about 15 locally,
Yeah,
right? That you're gonna have to do that because if you
Okay.
keep trying to import
We-
imams, you're gonna struggle because there's a culture clash and a number of other things.
yeah.
Just
And
on-
sorry, yeah.
further.
And these like the large boarding madrasas, the old ones,
Yeah.
like Bury and Dewsbury. Now do you have like boarding madrasas in London, or are they more like
There's
daytime?
there's one boarding madrasa in London only.
Darul London, is it?
Darul London, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, just on that point, the question's often posed, where shall we go to study sacred knowledge? Would you say now that the answers are more now localized, in that there isn't much need to travel abroad, especially in the context
England,
of
that's what's
in
happened.
the context of
Yeah.
England, obviously probably not here, we're not there yet. But would you sort of more confidently direct them to one of these Darul Ulum?
You see, it's much easier to go local because it's within the country, no visa issues, no culture issues and things like that. Also, after 9/11 and so on, there's issues with number of countries where you have to have very specialist visas and usually can't get them. England, for example, has stopped all foreigners from coming to study there,
That's right. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
people in Barbados, people in Panama, and all of these places, they no longer can come, or Trinidad and other, they can't come to England to study, which is in a blessing in disguise because now you've got a full-fledged Darul in Panama
Yeah.
and Barbados and so on. So I think this is what creates demand. It's like you can't stop this. It's going to happen somewhere
Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
inshallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that impressed me in my observations of England is when I was there.
Just sorry,
we-
Talha, if you bring the
Speak
mic.
louder.
No,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
no, just bring close to your mouth
Yeah.
and then just.
You're
Yeah.
very softly spoken,
Yeah.
which is a good
Mine's
The
okay.
Tarbiyya is year
Mine's
7.
okay, right?
Is year 7 Islamic
Yours is perfect.
studies teaches Tarbiyya, you know.
No, that's just
Alhamdulillah.
trauma, not tarbiyah. There's a difference.
Yeah, like, I was just
Sorry, you were saying that.
I was impressed by the response that when I asked, some of the students at CMC that, where'd you study? And the challenge was they're speaking like with a Bangladeshi, Bengali accent, Indian accent. And they're like, I studied in Darul Ulum, Bury or Dewsbury or Birmingham. And I'm like, no, where'd you study to become an alim? He's like, yeah, here. I'm like, mashallah. I'm like, you still have an accent though? He's like, no, I was born and raised here as well. So it's quite impressive how they
Oh,
can
it's like
preserve,
the Lebanese accent.
how they can preserve not only their culture but also raise upright on
Yeah.
a mat. And also, just on that point, it wasn't just, I know there's a lot of challenges with the current, classical madrasa curriculum and so forth, but I was impressed with how they could actually contextualize the knowledge to a certain extent as well, and how they were aware of contemporary realities despite just going through the Darul Ulum system. There might be
Yeah.
exemptions, but that was some of my...
I have a lot of even today in that WhatsApp group, the discussion
Yeah,
was
yeah.
there, and I made a few comments on it, like as well, that there's some WhatsApp local education WhatsApp group, and I don't know, like I'm always suspicious of the reforms.
Yeah.
This is my personal. I'm a bit too traditional maybe for that.
What do you
Well,
mean by that? You've got to clarify.
There are certain maybe Mufti Saab can elaborate, like this pressure constantly to update or to add things. Maybe some alims feel like, we need to change like the alim. That is it's a big topic.
So look, every madrasa, when I say 15 madrasas, and in England maybe a few hundred, they're not all the same.
Exactly.
There's the Joe Bloggs madrasas, there's the very good ones, and there's some decent ones.
Yeah.
That's going to be across universities have rankings. Madrasas is the same thing.
Yeah.
You can't expect that from every single one of these Darul Ulums that you're going to get a top-notch scholar. because that's just not going to happen because there's quality differences. So what we're doing at White Thread is we're just trying to raise the standard by taking graduates and trying to raise that standard. Because some places they just do things very easily. It's just like, okay, you study a bit or whatever, but they're not really particular about their academics, like really pushing them to do that. There's nothing wrong, I think, with the curriculum, because the curriculum is a modern curriculum anyway. The original Dars-e-Nidami curriculum was many years longer, and it was very different. There's just some of those books are still there. We already have changed it.
Correct.
I think, I don't want to get into this, but really what we need is you just need the way it's taught needs to be changed. It's the teacher. So the more aware the teacher is of the context, the better he'll be able to deliver that same book and that same core content. That's my understanding. Use the same syllabus, but it's just the way you articulate it and the way you contextualize it. Everybody can't do that, but we're getting there. And the big challenge was this: when our first scholars came from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc., the older generation, they came in a different world.
Yes.
The world has changed. You have to understand that in 50 years, the world has changed as it's never changed in history. Like literally, let that sink in. The world has not changed in about 50 to 100 years as it's never has changed, as it's never changed in history.
Yep.
The advancements in technology in our own lifetime. I mean, I mean, mobile phones,
Wow.
and so on and so forth. Windows 3.1 to no Windows to now Windows. I don't know what it's on right now. It's a massive change. The older generation couldn't adapt because it wasn't for them to do that. Now that the newer generation, those who they taught, my generation is teaching, we're in sync with all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's changing now. Before there was a complaint. I think that's getting that's getting sorted now, and it's only going to get better because, come on, I mean, anybody who's going to teach now and who's going to study through the system now and who's going to become a teacher, they have to be aware of all of these things.
Yes.
Right? Our older teachers weren't, but now everybody is.
So White Thread is sort of like, other than actually teaching the takhassusat, the specialization or subspecializations, it's also like a takmeel as well, like get the students sort of abreast with all that, what Talha was mentioning regarding contextualization or today's needs.
Contextualization and advancement, because after 6 years of study, it doesn't complete there. That's only a beginning. I mean, I tell that to everybody. Anybody who thinks it's the end of it, that you really don't know what you're talking about, right? So you need to carry on. So that's why we provide those advanced courses, but not just as advanced courses. We also try to then make it contextualized and just get them an understanding of how you deliver this in the modern world, because the modern world has changed.
Because you've yourself has you're coming from a traditional background in your Islamic academe, but also you did university education. How did you find, like, because a lot of young alims, like, they sort of, I've seen young alims go into academia, and it didn't turn out so good. I sometimes worry because I have an opportunity to do that.
What do you mean by it didn't turn out so good?
Yeah, what do you mean?
The compass sort of
so I don't think we can generalize in this at all, because there's a number. So
I'm talking about the specific people I've just seen. It's not everybody.
So what it is that I don't think this can be replicated. So it depends on where you studied first. So for example, where I studied, the teachers I studied with, I have absolutely no complaints against any of them except one complaint, and that's a compassionate complaint, that they didn't make me memorize enough. They didn't force me to memorize big texts, because I would have. That's the only thing I feel a sense of loss in, but that's just not part of our tradition. It is, and part of the older classical tradition of memorizing major mutuns and big texts and so on. But that's a compassionate complaint I have, right? I have no other complaint. So when I went to university, I appreciated what I was getting from there, but I never felt that this was better.
Yeah, okay.
You understand? Whereas there's some who studied in maybe, or not studied well enough. They've had good teachers, but they messed around in madrasa.
Yeah, right.
Right? They weren't into it. Now they're blaming the madrasa. And in some cases, the madrasa may be to blame, or some teachers are to blame that didn't give them the best that they could have got. Now they go to university and they compare. I saw no comparison. I saw a different system that I could take from its unique points. And that's what I've tried to do. So it depends on who you are, what your experience has been, and why you're going to university for. Otherwise, there's the difference in comparison is that not every university is top either.
That's correct.
Right? Some universities, it's just a play school. I've been to many, I've spoken at many universities.
Yeah.
Right? I've lived close to certain universities, and the parties just start at Thursday. Right? And if you really want to study, you'd study, otherwise you didn't. People go to study just to get away from home. Right?
Yeah.
So it depends on where you are. You can't say university is all the same. Likewise, all madrasas are not the same. Come on. Like, this is not even regulated. Do you see what I'm saying? So it depends on your experience, depends on what you're looking for and where you're coming from, and if you have a trauma or something.
So how do you, if you're, whether it's in a madrasa or if you're a Muslim parent and you've taught your kids Quran and things like that, what would you say to somebody going into university? Like you're saying, where you're coming from, how do you stop those mistakes, or what's...
Sorry, who's going into university?
So the student is going into university.
Is he an alim or he's not?
We're talking about ulama.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about ulama here. I mean, the whole university discussion, that would be another podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you say about ulama then? So what is the responsibility of the teachers before they send them in there? How can a teacher prepare his student?
I mean, do they even have to go?
Right.
It just depends on why you want to go there. Why do you want to go into academia? I'll say that our Sheikh Yusuf Mutala, rahimahullah, he's passed away now, he actually started encouraging the graduates to go to university.
Yeah, I read something also about his, he was encouraged about the thesis writing even in part of the dars, like in the alim course, at the end they should be writing a detailed, longer theses.
That may have been a later development. It wasn't in our time, but he definitely encouraged to go to university. I was in America at the time. I'd graduated at least 10, 12 years. And then when I heard this, I was like, what is he doing? He's my sheikh. But I was like, what is he doing? But now I understand. So what his thought idea is that we've prepared you enough to be able to go into university and protect yourself. He literally said that to some of the students who were a bit concerned that, haven't we taught you enough here to protect yourself? But why did he send them there? So I think he sent them there because every alim, because we have so many, as we said, so many graduates, they're not all going to be imams because there's not that many masjids to go around. They're not all going to be able to teach and make a living, for example. So I think our Sheikh's idea was go into the various different fields, become a pharmacist, become an engineer, become a doctor, become whatever else you want. You've got your ilm and your piety to continue, and you can actually infuse these various different areas, with some ethics, inshallah, and also make a living for yourself and be somebody that, can contribute to society on multiple levels. That's what I think he did. So, for example, from our madrasa, from the graduates, there's at least 6 or 7, I think, who have PhDs now. And in his lifetime, he's kept 2 programs, graduation programs at the madrasa for those who got PhDs elsewhere, that they would be celebrated in the madrasa.
Okay.
I actually missed my one because I was abroad, right, when he kept the second one. But his idea was the alim should become mainstream. Yep. So he could be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever else it is, along with being an alim. That was his vision, I think.
Yeah, and so other than White Thread, you're also teaching Zamzam Academy.
So Zamzam Academy, they're just lectures. It's just spiritual, motivation lectures. We've got like over 1,200 lectures on there. Okay. The idea is that so I would broadly split this whole kind of educational environment into 4. So one is general motivational lectures you have, right? Just regularly anybody can listen to. But then from that, we're trying to push people to the second level, which is for the general masses, not to become a scholar, but to get more structured courses. So that's the second level. And I think you guys are doing something like that. Yeah. Number 3 is the full-fledged alim or alima course. It's like an in-depth study to become a scholar, right? Or a leader or something like that. Then after that is the postgraduate stuff for personal development. So we are in 3 areas and we're just missing one area. So we've got Zamzam Academy. That's for the general lectures, like 1,200 lectures on there. Then we've got Rayyan courses or Rayyan Institute, which is for the general public courses, online, on demand. Then we don't do an alim or alima course. Why? Because there's already so many out there. We try not to replicate. We try to fill a gap. That's what we're trying to do. So then we've got thousands of ulama around the world, in the English-speaking world. So now we've got White Thread Institute, which is then providing for the postgraduate scene. Right, so you become a scholar wherever you are, good or bad. You did it well or not. Come and so we've got refresher courses on there for scholars. And we've got then advancement courses. So we're literally just trying to fill a gap.
Inshallah. And just Talha, the Muslim Melbourne Muslim
Seminary.
Melbourne Muslim Seminary.
Yeah.
MMS.
MMS.
So what's the courses that are?
So we only have one primary course. It's,
Okay.
I guess it's an amalgamation of the Fard Ayn and a couple of introductory sciences into the humanities.
Yep.
Such as making of the modern mind and I guess Islamic civilization. So we have 3 terms. The first one looks at usul, usul al-Quran, fiqh, sirah, and usul al-Quran and aqidah.
Okay.
And then the second term we have making of the modern mind. We have Islamic civilization. Then we have fiqh too, and also usul al-hadith. And then finally we have counseling and psychology in the final course.
Okay.
In addition to tazkiyah, Islamic community, and one more that I can't recall. And finally, there's a selective component. So they either do a research, a chaplaincy program, or a khitaba course.
Okay.
So it's
Nice.
it's not an in-depth course, but the intention is similar to what Mufti said. Is just to connect them, establish that beginning, and hopefully from there encourage them to.
It sounds like every Muslim college. Bits of elements sounds familiar.
I guess it's a mix of
from the
everything.
syllabus, if I remember correctly.
Jam bain al
mashallah.
madhahib. So there's a lot of.
Yeah, no, good, mashallah. So, and
I guess
you're based, and the class are running out of
Out of Ilm College at the moment. I guess overall the intention.
Is it Ilm College on the Sydney Road or?
So there's 5 campuses.
Okay,
Well,
mashallah.
The one on Sydney Road is just the head office. There's no school there.
Oh, okay. But your classes are in the Inverloch.
Inverloch
Crescent,
Dallas
okay.
campus.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think as Mufti would probably observe as well, the connection to the scholarly tradition here isn't as deep as it is in the UK. So especially in the non-subcontinental communities, it's a bit weaker. So we want to, I guess, be a platform to begin that journey for a lot of the students.
Excellent, mashallah.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing to say in Australia. Okay, we're doing a madrasa, and in the madrasa we're going to produce alims in Australia, and it's not run by an awqaf, because the idea of the Arab Middle Eastern communities is some ministry has to run this. What do you mean you're going to be teaching Bukhari in the mosque, or you're teaching fiqh and sharia? Like it doesn't. Our madrasa is like in the masjid, just in the masjid. I presented the madrasa to 6-7 masajid in Melbourne, and finally one of the Bangladeshi masjids they understood. The brothers understood. They had a meeting. They were happy. They were in tears. Our communities are like that. And because the masjids, it's our biggest resource, like in terms of the amount of money we put in Australia, and there's several masjids being built at the moment. They're all over $10 million in Australia, and in Sydney especially, and they just sit empty the whole day.
Exactly.
Yeah, like we don't need even other buildings for it. Our footprint for madrasas is so small, like in terms of small desks and on the floor, and I mean it's there might be other places sitting on table and chairs, but like it's so small that you can pack away the madrasa. Like we've packed away our madrasa. At the end of the day, for the musallis, we pack it away, put it in the corner, and the madrasa's gone. Now it's a masjid. So, but sadly, like, but trying to explain it to people, like, okay, so which university recognizes this?
Exactly. They're always looking at accreditations.
Yeah.
Like
I said every Darul Uloom recognizes in the world. That's how I usually say there's 50,000 Darul Ulooms in the world, and they will all recognize if the stand is good. If they take the exam, they will accept this. So you got to, it's a bit of wordplay, but
But it's true. It's not.
yeah,
really
no, they will
wordplay. It
recognize.
is
Our
what it is.
students have gone on to study in South Africa. They sat the entry exam for 2nd, 3rd, 4th year, and they got in those classes. Student went to Malaysia, did Mishkat with us, 5th year with us. I was really worried for the first batch, because like you've been sitting with 6 years teaching. Like, are you doing anything right? And then in Malaysia, Maulana Dr. Adil, Maulana Salimullah Khan's son, Shaheed Rahmatullah alayhi. So he's Darul Uloom in Malaysia. So it's his students there. So we send the students there, and they took the exam, and the Mufti there, he sent a message back. He's from Pakistan. He said, "Fusta fa fusta fa fusta." So that was a good, like,
Which means what?
You succeed. Inshallah, Allah accept. But he was just happy with the standard with the like. You're always worried, like, am I wasting these students' time, or are they actually getting any benefit? But the idea of doing madrasas, I think, because we've seen it as well. Like in our area in Pakistan, in the north, like one of I forgot the name of the sheikh, very senior alim, it's on the tip of my tongue. He used to come and teach Bukhari, just take his chadar off, his shawl, wrap it up, put Bukhari. And that's one of the after Book of Allah, in the madrasas, it's probably the most prestigious seat, book to read, to teach, the Sheikh al-Hadith madrasa. So he just used to take his shawl off, wrap it, and then give Dars Bukhari on it with such simplicity. So, but this is something because we've been conditioned to a certain way of education has to be. A standard should be there, and when it gets bigger, all those structures and things come into place, and organization becomes established. But you're right, the general community, the subcontinent community, sort of spoiled like a little bit. They don't appreciate having so many hufaz and madaris, and they take it for granted maybe compared to maybe other communities.
But do you think they take it for granted in Australia? I don't think so.
They might
not in
even,
Australia.
They might not even the subcontinent.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, we have to wrap up. Just last thing, we've got 5 minutes, inshallah. So don't go yet. Mufti Saab, you wrote this book on marriage. So this is, mashallah, an original work. I went through it. Either you can read it before marriage as guidance, or you can read it after marriage and make istighfar and feel for all the places you've gone wrong. Me and Abdul Wajid were discussing the book and the advices in it. It's a really good book, mashallah barak. I enjoyed the read and the advices in it. And inshallah we get tawfiq to implement and practice it.
Ameen.
Inshallah. And all of us, inshallah. But there was something, this is a book. A lot of the issues that come as an imam, they come to myself. It's like almost, there's very little you can say because it's like they're like a mindset and a tarbiyya is there, a way of thinking is there in the individual that they can't make it work because they're so, it's not like one advice. It's like they're on two different wavelengths. The couple can be on different wavelengths. Her understandings of what a marriage is totally skewed. His understanding is like he's telling his wife, you have to work. Like these are the type of discussions that are being had. And there's some basic like premises, like missing basic Islamic understandings that are missing in Tarbiyya. Sheikh Nuh Keller talks about this in his book, Sea Without Shore. There's a section on marriage, and he says he gives advice to mothers, and the same would apply to sons as well. I mean, it's got to, because we're preparing like, even if you're giving information, but the tarbiyya side of thing, where do they get that? I mean, if they don't have parents who can teach them, like Sheikh Nuh said that many mothers mistake a good education for tarbiyya. And so if that hole is there, tarbiyya is not given, where would they?
So are we talking about bringing up children now?
It's more about young adults, children that will become, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you have to start from a young age. You can't wake up when they're 16 and then say, I need to teach you now. That's my next book, inshallah, about bringing up children. So I've been thinking about that for a while, that you can't just switch on afterwards when things start going wrong and you start noticing signs and you're thinking, oh, I need to do something about this. You need to literally direct it from a young age so that their tarbiyya is done, because tarbiyya is akhlaq, it's character.
Yeah.
That has to be ingrained from a young age, and I think it can be. Right? And all you have to do is you just have to work on your first one or two. If you have more children, you only have to work on your first one or two. Believe me, they will help you sort the rest out. It is really, really useful to do that way. It's not that difficult, but you have to be on the ball from the beginning, right? And I guess it's a new thing that people don't understand. The West is because there's the outside community is very, very powerful. It's very challenging. Before, it never used to be like that because we were in very homogeneous societies and communities. Everybody in the village did the same thing. Everybody in town did the same thing. Everybody thought the same way. Everybody was on the same wavelength. We're dealing with individualism, postmodernism, relative truths and things like that. And you're finding it difficult to get a daughter thinking the same way as a mother, a son thinking the same way. They don't even want to carry on their businesses unless they're very easy businesses.
I've seen
so
that.
It's a whole new scenario we're dealing with. You have to start from a young age, and so you literally have to adjust, to that and be flexible. And you can't win every battle. But that's a whole new subject.
Yeah, there's like one young man was saying he wants to marry a doctor. So why? And he said, because he's going to bring the money in. He's a young Muslim man. This is like his ethics, or he doesn't understand. And I have to explain to sit him down and say, no, listen, mate. When you get married, you're responsible for the household and the finances, and this is your Islamic obligations. You don't have to bring 1 cent to you.
Exactly.
You
Even
know,
if she's a millionaire, she doesn't have to pay a cent.
So like these are all these little
In
holes.
fact, if he said, I want a doctor so that I don't have to go to doctors and I've got a home base, I'd appreciate that.
No, it wasn't that.
Yeah.
Having
So
a
there
doctor
was,
in the family is a nice thing, you know. You need an alim and a doctor in the family, I think. Then you're sorted.
So it's so tarbiyya. The tarbiyya starts young. Yeah, exactly.
It has to
Yes,
start
they're molded from a younger age. We have this whole thing at the moment, the young men, especially the whole red pill, and there's a whole movement online where they are molding
Andrew Tate,
etc. Or the likes of him, with the red pill movements, all this. They're trying to mold the next generation of young men, and it's having an impact in England, especially. It was brought up in Parliament in England, and they were discussing because they didn't give tarbiyya, or they just sort of left it, and these people, rightly, wrongly, whatever, they may have certain things right and certain things wrong, but they are filling in the void.
Exactly. I mean, if there's negative tarbiyya going on, there's somebody trying to provide positive tarbiyya.
Yeah. Even here in Australia as well.
Yeah.
And there's boys, and it was an article, and they kept the teacher's name out and whatever, and the students, high school boys, they're telling her, you know, because you shouldn't be working, you should be in the kitchen, sort of things. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like the impact is huge, and they're worried now because it's affecting like more than 50% of boys. Those 50% of boys, they're the 50% of men of the future, and they've internalized all these ideas. So that's why it was coming up in Parliament and so forth. So the tarbiyya is pretty strong. The external tarbiyya is
I think it's just going back to the asl, isn't it? That's why it appeals, because it is the asl, it is the original, it is the default.
in terms of like it taps into something that is
I mean, I think
innate-
it's ingrained in
innate-
us. I mean, you can call it
That's right.
you can call it evolutionary, you can call it whatever you want.
Yeah. It's like in the fitra or something that they
Absolutely.
that it has to. That's why it resonates. So, like it broke through all the programming of decades.
Oh,
Just
decades of
within
programming.
1 year.
Yeah.
Like we were raised up. We're in the generation that the self-esteem movement. I remember in the 80s we were taken out of class. I was taken out. We were taken out. There was a special class held. It's called the if you read about it, the self-esteem movement. And these experiments, these are social experiments that have been done in primary school. Doncaster
I don't
Park
even
Prim-
remember. No, I didn't
I remember like they were teaching, and it didn't make sense because it wasn't like a normal subject. You're not studying anything. They're talking about your feelings, and they're trying to boost your esteem, self. There's a whole thing about, you know, this whole everyone gets a trophy and all that started. So our generation was corrupted. They did that tarbiyah at a very. Then you start thinking back all the things that were being said to you.
I think back to
didn't do
high
hifz
school.
al-Quran. I did hifz of all these self-esteem slogans that they.
I do think back to high school in Australia and think, look, there was a lot of things that we were taught, or that we were taught to believe is what is successful for the future, which is incorrect. Which you can see now there was an agenda behind it. And I think the only reason we can see that is because we were brought up in the West. Our parents couldn't see that.
I don't think, like, we use agenda, it might be a strong word, but it's
No,
more.
it's an agenda. I feel
like
I'm sticking with
we get
that
to the
word.
conspiracy theory category, and I don't want to be there.
Who killed
But
JFK?
I think there was decisions made in the education department, and then they started the implementing.
It was
this.
by design, essentially.
Yeah, by
right?
design. Yeah, I think
But that's why
what-
you got a lot of self-esteem, though, right?
You're
You're very confident.
No, not at the end of the podcast. I have a little bit more, and not really. I was in 1,100 students. I was like, there was 3 Muslims, and we used to get bullied like anything. You know, it was the worst.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
quite
was.
interesting.
We came out of it all right, alhamdulillah.
He actually goes home and covers himself with a shawl and sits in the
It's
corner.
Patan. I mean,
Yeah. No, we came
He's a
out.
fake Patan.
Yeah, we came out of it. We're going to change, make the whole Australia Muslim. You know? Inshallah. Jazakallah khair, Mufti Saab. Really, I want to talk more about Zamzam and White Thread and all the other projects and good works that you're doing. Just the time is short. Please do get this book, inshallah. It's a worthwhile read. There's a shipment arriving, inshallah. I will talk about that some other time. It takes a long time, mashallah.
you don't have these in there.
No, wasn't it? Oh no, it wasn't. No, it
That's the
wasn't.
fiqh
Okay,
al-akbar
next
and
order.
saviors.
Oh, okay, that's right. Inshallah. I think some on our way stocks these ones. If I remember
find
correct.
them. We'll find them.
Inshallah. We'll PDF it and we'll share it on our. I'm just joking. So. Inshallah, it's copyright.
Jazakallah khair, Mufti Saab. Jazakallah,
Talha.
Brother Talha. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and press the bell icon. Till next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.